Ciao a tutti, mi chiamo RagingRaptor e oggi ho un nuovo carro armato per voi. And with that, I welcome you to a new Supertest video. This is going to be our first high-tier-ish Italian light tank, the Donnola. And this tank is fairly interesting. Why, you might say? Well, not only does it have a 80 damage gun, which is 60 millimeters in diameter. We'll see where I'm going with that. It also has a clip. So why do I pronounce it that way? For some of you which are playing War Thunder, you might notice this tank looks a little bit sussy. Because it looks fairly similar to what the VCC 8060 is. And judging by how everybody really hates this tank, it ain't good in War Thunder. In World of Tanks, however, it looks fairly interesting and fairly nicely balanced. Something might even would say, oi, the Ares tanks need to take a little bit of peek of that. In any case, what is the Donnola's main gimmick? Because let's be honest, every single tank has to have a gimmick, doesn't it? It has an 80 damage gun, and it has normal pen ratios, it has normal HE, it has a clip, and the clip is very similar to what the Char MLE has. Each burst, let's put it that way, has 3 rounds in it, and apparently it takes 0.3 seconds to shoot these 3 rounds. These are information I got from Wargaming, so let's hope they are correct. After that, you have 2.5 seconds to load the next 3-shot clip. Then it goes another ding ding ding, and another 2.5 seconds, and another ding ding ding. This gives us, if my math is mathing, around 5.9 seconds to fully unload all of your 9 shots. And that also means in just 3 rounds you can do 240 damage on burst, which is 0.3 seconds, which it sounds kind of wild that it is this much in such short time. Then again, don't forget, this tank does as much damage as, for example, the LTC roughly does in one single shot, you know. And then the total burst is 720, which then again, it sounds a lot if you think about that. For example, the Ares tanks deal this amount of damage in around 2.5 seconds, and they do around 1000 damage. Yes, they're not light tanks, but you get the point. Or the Progetto does it in, what was it, around 5 seconds, or the Burrasque, which does it in around 2 seconds, does the same amount of damage. So even though, yes, it is burst, yes, it is clip, it doesn't, in the grand scheme of World of Tanks things, it's not that much. And again, 6 seconds to deal 720 damage does feel, how should we say, more balanced than getting 2.5 seconds to receive 1000 damage thanks to the Ares tanks. And then it has a 16-second reload. When we compare this to the Char MLE, you will notice again, the Char MLE does in the same amount of time roughly double the damage. Not exactly, because exactly would be 1440, but it is fairly close and it takes a little bit shorter. The Projet Louis does in 7 seconds, it does 1000 damage. So in 6 seconds, it does 900 damage, which again is quite a bit more than the 720 of the Donnola. And the LTC is a little bit weird in that regard. I decided to take it simply because of the fact that I believe the Donnola feels a little bit chubby. And a little bit like me, you know, it's a little bit burly, bulky. The cool thing about the Donnola is it has pretty decent penetration, 214. It also has pretty decent gold penetration, 260, with APCR and heat rounds. And it has normal HE, meaning that you get what you see on the tin. With the Ares tanks, it's always a little bit iffy. It will be interesting to see, though, what the module damage of this gun will be. Again, you can do 9 shots basically in a clip, which is the same amount an Ares tank does. And the Ares tanks have, like, what was it, 4 module damage, while, as an example here, these vehicles have 135, 100, 122. And the Char MLE is known to have a lot of module damage. Then again, the Projet Louis is probably the closest with the 75mm gun, which very close to our 60mm gun. So maybe we are looking at around 80 or 90 module damage. That is something which Wargaming didn't tell us yet, but could be fairly interesting when it comes to making or breaking this vehicle. Now, something else. It has okayish aim time, 2 seconds ain't that good, but it ain't too bad, and has 0.37 accuracy, which is the worst of the bunch. Accuracy on the move we sadly do not know, but we do know it has 10 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty nifty in my honest opinion. I made a little mistake with the Char MLE. Obviously, it doesn't go 55 in mobility mode, but then again, the Char MLE has mobility and the damage mode, so we have to keep that in mind. Here it is in damage mode to give us better feelings for how the tank is behaving. The Donnola has 70 kph in top speed and 20 kph in reverse, which is the fastest of the bunch, except for reverse speed, where the LTC is actually quite more quicky when it comes to that regard. And HP per turn ratio ain't that good when you compare it to the others. Then again, though, the HP per turn ratio at such high values, there is no big difference. You know, like when you go from, how should we say, when you go from 11 to 12, it feels like a bigger difference because it can make the difference of not reaching your top speed and reaching your top speed. But when you go from 29 to 30, ain't that much of a difference because you will always hit the top speed regardless, you know. So you will only be faster at acceleration and getting up onto the hill on, for example, Himmelsdorf. Now, when it comes to survivability, it is still kind of hard to say how big the Donnola is. Judging by the concealment rates, it ain't that big. Because look, the Char MLE has 16%, the Projet Louis has also 16%, and the LTC, which is known to be a clunker and a fat chunker, which makes sense, it's American, is around 14. And we are here sitting at 17.56. So if you keep that in mind, with the total hit points of 1400 and knowing that it has 380 meters of fuel range, it is a better scout than a Projet Louis. And it ain't even close. It has 1.5% more camo rating. That ain't little. That is pretty decent. While also having, well, not the same burst potential, but pretty decent burst potential in that regard. So that means that, in my opinion, the Donnola, when it comes to purely scouting, and it is definitely more a damage scout than a traditional scout, like a Cheezer, for example, it probably still is going to be a pretty darn decent scout. It really just depends how chunky it is, because 1400 hit points usually indicates it has a lot of size. But then again, the concealment rating is fairly low. However, concealment rating is always a little bit of a hard thing to say. Just so you know, the Hori 3 and the Gorilla 15 are equal in size, yet the Hori has like double or triple the camo rating of the Gorilla 15. That's how well gaming is balancing this stuff. But yeah, armor weight, nah, don't forget about it. Armor is... So, with that, now you might say, Jesus, another gimmick tier 9 premium, probably premium tank in the game. What am I supposed to do? That is where our today's sponsor, Iniba, comes in handy. Iniba is a way for you to get new games very cheap. It's a key store. And when they reached out to me and asked me, "Oi Raptor, you want to do a collab?" I was like, hell yeah. You know why? Because I'm using it. I have already been using Iniba quite often. I, for example, got Helldivers from it, a game I really do enjoy. And Iniba is just a platform I know I can trust to, that all of these codes are legitimate, they work, and it's just an easy process. And that is why I am very glad that we can partner up and I can recommend them to you. So please consider checking out Iniba. The links are down below, and thank you very much for Iniba for sponsoring this video. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. My name is RagingRaptor. Don't forget to subscribe and some feedback if you have any, and I'll see you around. Cheers.